to look at thesis statements and introductions. A little bit different than our previous ones just because of the concepts we're looking at. So we want to take a bit of a deeper dive. Our agenda today is just to look at a sample thesis statement and how we might try it, and introductions and again how we might try it. So what is it? A thesis statement is a sentence or perhaps a series of sentences that appear usually at the end of an introductory paragraph and express the main point of an argument of the essay. Well, main point or argument of the essay. So what we're looking at is we're saying, as writers, we are going to put something in that introduction that tells our reader, this is the key. This is what I'm going to talk about. This is how I'm going to talk about it. The awesome thing about that is that other writers are doing the same thing. So as readers, we can look at the start of any particular work, and we should also be able to find that thesis and say, oh, that's the key to what that writer is talking about. So look for that the next article you read, the next magazine article, the next blog post. Look and see if someone's doing it and how well they're doing that. So for our essay, we want to identify a central theme or argument from Hills Like White Elephants that we want to analyze. Remember that you part. You don't have to just pick one I'm sharing. You can absolutely go with those, but pick something you're excited to explore. Then we want to identify the specific writing strategies that will help us analyze it. So is it looking at metaphor or communication or dialogue or space? What exactly is it that we want to use to explore and sort of crack open that nut and get to the meat of the argument or theme we want to analyze? So here's an example. I've left some of it open. As you can see, it's fill in the blank. But we start with, well, what is it? So in his short story, Hills Like White Elephants, that's what we're looking at, Hemingway, the author, explores, and that's where I'm going to fill in the blank with the topic or topics I find most powerful. And then I have space here for the rest of my thesis. Hemingway uses X, Y, and Z to explore that. We can also make it into one sentence, but it's kind of cozy here as two. Remember, you also can focus on just one writing strategy. I can say he uses X to explore this. So what could that look like? We have our first idea of the argument that I want to look at. In this case, I'm saying in his short story, Hills Like White Elephants, Hemingway explores human rights and argues that we should have bodily autonomy by showing that Jig chooses her current mental health or illness over a medical procedure to fix her trepanning. How the author uses the writing strategies to get there is in my next sentence, where I say Hemingway uses dialogue and symbolism to present this point. So I've picked two. As I said a moment ago, 3 is great. It's a great starting point. We have those X, Y, and Z, but you get to decide. And so in this case, I'm picking 2 because it just suits what I want to explore really well. Let's go into it. So remember, let's try it. What's the primary message or argument that we want to explore? I've started you off with this, but you get to fill in that blank. And if you want to shake it up, you absolutely can. I love that we can have sort of formulas when we're writing, because writing does work really well as being described as a code, and we are breaking that code and we are diving into it. So we can take this strategy, format, code, and then we can fill in what we want, but we can also alter it as we need to or see fit. So start there and see where you go. And then the next part is that we want to share how we get there. So I say he does something, he's arguing something, presenting something, exploring something, but how does he do that? And again, it could be 1, 2, 3, or it could be 1 or 2. Any way that you want to explore that. But try it in that format and see where it takes you. So the next part is to take that information and put it into an introduction. We still need things like a hook. Why is it interesting? Why do we want to share these ideas with our readers? So let's go explore those concepts. So first off, what does our reader or audience need to know? Some questions to ask are, what might they need to know about Hemingway so they can understand our essay? What might they need to know about the story to understand our thesis? Do we need to give some clues or details? I'm positing this as a could we, may we, might we, because you may not need a lot of information about the author or even a summary of the story to get where you need to go. Typically, there are two things that we really want to look for these academic analytical essays. We want to introduce that concept, obviously, and we want to introduce why that concept is valuable. Why should your reader care? Why should they want to know more? That's where our hook is, because we're saying, oh, this is why you may have read that story, but check this out. This is a reading of it or a way to explore it. So sometimes you're going to hear, oh, well, summarize the story for me. And I'm going to argue and holler and yell and scream and say, no, 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 no. So in academic writing, it's understood that either the reader knows about the author or story. I mean, how am I going to look it up if I don't know who the author's name is? I've got to have like that foothold to go explore. Or we know that our reader could quickly look this up. It's a quick internet search of Hemingway, Hills Like White Elephants summary, and our reader's going to get everything in a short post. So I don't need to sort of reinvent the wheel there. There are times where you do want to share those details. For instance, in this example where I'm looking at mental health, I could say, you know what? I want to talk about Hemingway's mental health. I want to explore why he might be so interested in bodily autonomy, in which case I want to talk about the time period that he was alive. I want to talk about his war experience, the adventures he had, the traumas that he had to his body and to his mind. I may want to talk about his depression and why that led to his untimely death. I may want to add those details. If I go that direction, then yes, I want to add some key elements or summaries about the author or about the story, but only if I'm using that to build my particular argument. A lot of times I see all of these start as such and such was written by so and so who was born in this time and who wrote the story in that time. And all of that is honestly the first paragraph in a Wikipedia page. So let's not take up space. We only have 4 to 5 pages. I know it sounds at first like, how do I fill 4 pages? That's so much. But believe me, as you dive into this and start getting some examples, you're going to switch it to, I only have 4 pages. How am I going to get everything in there? So I want you to sort of walk away from, oh, I've got to summarize everything, and tell your reader to be responsible and go do that work themselves. So here's what we would want to do if we want to try the introduction, which you're doing to turn into me. Introduce the concept you want to explore. That's basically the thesis you already did, so you're halfway there. Introduce why that concept is valuable. So we had my thesis a minute ago, right? It actually starts down here in his short story. So half of it's already there. As I said, you've already got half if you've written your thesis with those 2 sentences. But why should anyone care that I want to talk about human rights and bodily autonomy? Let's go back to my hook. Can we, society, decide for everyone when it comes to bodily autonomy? For instance, if someone has a mental illness, should he be forced to take medication? If someone has an illness that causes awkward body movements, do we have the right to make her take medication to stop those movements? In his short story, Hills Like White Elephants, Hemingway explores human rights and argues that we should have bodily autonomy by showing that Jig chooses her current mental health or illness over a medical procedure to fix her, which would be trepanning. Hemingway uses dialogue and symbolism to present this point. So you already have half of it once you write that thesis, and then we're looking for why should it matter? Why did we pick this? What's exciting about it? And remember, yes, we want to use this as the start of our paper, so we should have a paragraph done. But what do we know about outlines and about drafts? We know that they are ideas and concepts. It gives us a chance to grab some dirt in our hand and throw it at the wall and see if any of it got muddy and sticks. But we don't have to keep any of it. We can wash that wall right down, clean off that piece of paper, and completely retype it if we want to later. But right now, we are just throwing something at the wall that caught our attention that we may want to explore, and it lets you get that idea down while letting me give you some feedback and support. So let's go tackle thesis statements and introductions and see what kind of stuff we find.